Hello, and welcome to Trigger Warnings Book Club, the show where we talk about books that make us laugh, cry, and clutch our pearls. We're your hosts, Holly and Caitlin. With us, as always, our producer, Andrew. And today we're joined by a very exciting guest, contemporary and fantasy romance writer and author of Fury of the White Witch, the upcoming final book of the Kingdoms of Light and Shadow trilogy, C.R. Lee. Thanks so much for joining us today, Courtney.
Thank you for having me.
Before we begin, if you love talking about hot and steamy romances, hit follow so you don't miss episodes like this one. Before we get into the interview, we like to start off the show by talking about what everyone's currently reading. Andrew, I happen to know you're in the middle of something very exciting right now, so why
Oh
don't you go
yeah.
first?
Okay. So on the back of my last book that we've read, which was Morning Glory Milking Farm, that turned into our next August book club, which is Kiss of the Basilisk. So I started reading that about halfway through. Whoa, what a hot and steamy book that is. Woo woo woo. Yeah. So about halfway through, I have no idea where it's gonna end up, but I would say I'm enjoying it, but I'm just experiencing it right now. I haven't really processed anything yet.
I'm also in a little bit of a fantasy romance mood right now, so I started the audiobook of City of Gods and Monsters finally, and it's like 8 million years long. I started it on one of my runs. I'm enjoying it. I would describe it for anyone who's listening as a mix. It's like I would say 80% Crescent City, 20% Zodiac Academy. And if you know, you know. Like there's a lot going on. It's high stakes, but also like it's just kind of pure ridiculousness at some points as well. And they're like classic 19-year-olds.
I have been getting into Storm Chaser romance actually. So I just finished In Stormy Weather. I think I finished that this weekend, maybe. I might have talked about that last week. But I have now started Twisting Fates by author Lee Creek that we interviewed a couple of weeks ago, actually. I'm not very far in. I am like 10 pages and I started it at lunch today. And then I also read a book that I bought at the event where I learned about Kiss of the Basilisk and convinced Andrew to read the book. I have not read it yet, by the way.
But you've been getting my
Um,
updates.
Yeah.
I have been
I've
getting
been
her
live streaming my
updates.
thoughts to Holly and CJ.
um, but I read I'm forgetting the name of it now. It's sitting on my couch, but I'm not there. It's a romance book that takes place in Italy, and she is trying to get her Italian citizenship from her dad that she did not know and died years ago. So that way she can get funding for her postdoc degree in Switzerland.
Oh,
So
this is
she's
the one where she dates the mayor.
the mayor. Yes, she dates the mayor. So that one's been fun. I started that this weekend and I finished it today before work. Hence starting a book at lunch.
And Courtney, tell us what you're reading.
Well, I just started Crown Me Dead by Liv Zander. It's pretty interesting so far. It's a little disgusting because everybody's like dying and they got like maggots in them and stuff.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's gross, but I kind of like that. I'm a little nervous about the whole like idea that she has to make out with the guy who's like all gross and dying body, but I haven't
Mm.
gotten to that part yet, so I can't tell you if she actually has to make out with him or not. But yeah, I was a little concerned about that. But so far, so good. I like her writing, so we're giving her a shot with this one. Um, I just finished The Poison Daughter by Sheila Masterson, and that was a great book. Really liked the characters. They were just really believable, I guess is the word I'm looking for. I have a hard time sometimes. I get picky with
Mm.
writing. And so it can sometimes be hard for me. Like I will get into a book like a third of the way and then I'll just quit. So it's really a good sign when I finish it. Okay. So that was a great one. I really enjoyed A Poisoned Daughter. And Shield of Sparrows was one that I read recently too. And that book was fabulous. Was Devney Perry. She's such a good writer. I really, really like her book a lot. So, so those are some of the ones I've read lately. I tend to get distracted and jump around. I'm that kind of a reader. So I getting to that second book in the series sometimes doesn't always happen. But yeah, those are very enjoyable books that I liked a lot.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely sound interesting, and we can agree, Caitlin and I are, like, the worst at finishing a series, because we'll, like, start it, and then we'll be like, "Oh, this is so good," and if I don't immediately have book 2, like, downloaded, ready to go, I won't read
I'll
book
s-
2 for, like, 2
yeah.
years.
I'll say that I'll come back to it, and then I come back to it like 6 months to a year later, and I'm like, oh, I wish I remembered the first couple, because like a lot of times they're like the interconnected standalones, and you're like, I remember them, but like I don't fully remember them. And then I was like, I should have read this closer. Why did I put it off for so long?
Yeah, and then I do
But
it again with book 3.
mm-hmm. And then rinse and repeat.
I would say actually that's something that I've encountered way too much, especially when I was in my George Martin and Patrick Rothfuss days, where there's like 10 years between a book. That I actually for this last book, Hunt, and probably for my next one, I did a our book so far intro, just because one, I'm not a fast writer, and two, it really sucks when you get back. Like you want to read the book, you know you enjoyed the first book, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to have to read that whole damn book over again just to read the next one, which is what I tried to do for Feast of Crows with George Martin. I read all the books before it, and then by the time I got to A Feast for Crows, I was like, oh, I don't want to read anymore. So yeah, that's just kind of funny that you said that. I should probably do that on the interconnected standalones too. That's actually probably a good point. So I only did it on this one because they are like sequential, right? You have to read them
Yeah.
in order.
Yeah. No,
So that
that's
was
smart.
a Robin Hobb thing that I stole. I totally didn't come up with that. So
But it's good to have. It's good to have. Very
Yeah.
helpful.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, Courtney, you spoke about how you tend to bounce around when you read books from
Mhm.
series to series. How about your writing style? Do you tend to kind of knock a chapter out at a time? Do you go in with your writing with a plan, or do you kind of just improvise and see how far you can get in a writing session?
So a little bit of everything. I think I change my process every time I write a new book. Like I'm still trying to figure that out sometimes, but I usually have an outline. And I wish I could remember the name of the software I use right now. Plotter. If anybody who's a writer, that's such a great program. It's very visual. I'm a visual person, and it has everything sort of like little note cards for you, and I'll plot out like big chunks of what's going to happen, like using like a 4-act structure. But I very rarely stick to it. I have a tendency to I start with that, and then I start at the beginning and I just write, and I'll see what happens. And very often I'll get to the end and I'll be like, oh, gotta change a bunch of crap in the beginning because I changed a whole bunch of things at toward the middle or
Yeah.
the end of the book, which is what's
Mm-hmm.
happening right now.
Mm.
I finished this book, Fury, but now I'm going back to the beginning and I have to fix a bunch of stuff to make it work, the way I had it in the end.
So
So
does that go all the way back to your first book? Like, are you trying to tie story points from your first book with this last book? Or do you like,
absolutely.
yeah, and
Yeah.
are you like mad at your former self for like making you chase this storyline all the way through?
Oh my God, yes. Oh, this is the first true trilogy like that I've written. So I've written a ton of beginning trilogies and then never finished them when I was originally trying to get an agent. And then I have my Never Used series, which is 4 books, but they're interconnected standalones. It's a very different beast to have a 3-book series where you have something from the very, very first book that has to come back around to the end or the third book. And it was so complicated that I actually had to, when I was plotting this book out, I had to divide it up by person to see, like, okay, what did this person need to accomplish as part of their sort of plot line, because it was so much. It was like overwhelming. Um, but yeah. So I've kicked myself a number of times. And yes, I have to go back and I have to look at the old books sometimes because I don't note things down properly. My husband actually, he reads all my books and he's kind of my developmental editor. And he'll be like, "Oh, but you did this in the last book." I'm like, "Oh shit, I forgot." He's like, "How can you forget your own books?" I don't know because I'm writing so many freaking words. Okay. I mean, you can read it in like a week. It takes me months to write this stuff, you know? So yeah, I forget things. But yeah, so I am kicking myself on a daily on that one, definitely.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
this
I
has been a
I
new
def
troubling experience.
Yeah, I can't imagine
yeah.
because like reading a trilogy, there's probably so much information a reader has to take in, but then as a writer, it's all like in your head, and you have to try to solve it yourself. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I certainly see how writing a trilogy would like force you to have to plot way more than like you would anticipate plotting because like I forget things that I read in a trilogy in book 1 in all honesty. So like
Right.
and I've read that over the course of like a week, right? Or however long. I couldn't imagine like writing for months to years at a time and having to remember every little thing. Plus like you're where the like creative process starts and I have a hard time sometimes if I'm like really into a book or I was reading a book before bed. I go to sleep and I dream the book and
Yeah, I
sometimes I
do that.
wake
I do
up
that.
and I'm like, did I read that scene or was that my
Yeah.
dream? Like what happened? So I couldn't imagine all the things going through your brain as you're writing a trilogy.
No, and the worst part is that when I write it, sometimes I cut scenes. Actually, a lot. I cut scenes, right? I'll go in and like I said, I have to go back and change the whole first part of the book to make it work with the next part of the book. And then I'm like, okay, wait, did this happen? Like, I forget. Like, I wrote that scene. I know I wrote that scene, but did I keep that scene in the book? So then I had to go back and I have to figure that out. And don't even get me started on eye colors because I can't remember them to save my damn life. So it's interesting, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That actually made me think as we were kind of having this conversation of something I've always wondered. Have you ever, especially now that you're working on this trilogy, had like seen a reader theory with like they have all the evidence and it's not something that you had consciously thought of or put in the book and it's just something that people have picked up on?
The only time a reader really surprised me with something they said, and I was like, holy crap, that's absolutely true, was when somebody compared my male character Eamon to Flynn Rider from
Mm,
Twist. Is it Tangled? Tangled is the
Tangled.
name
Yeah,
of
yeah.
it.
Hmm.
And I was like, mind blown. Oh my God, yes, he's just like him. Because that's like my favorite kind of hero. And I was like, he's Flynn Rider. So now I use that for everything. And I'm like, yes, he's a Flynn Rider type character. He's not broody. He's like Flynn Rider. So that's the only one I can think of. I think I've been really happy a few times when people have sort of understood where I was going. So like I had one person talking about my character, especially in the first book, as being vulnerable, but she's not a damsel in distress. She's a regular girl, but she will fight you. She will nails, teeth, whatever, right? And the way she said that and the way she caught on to that was like, oh my God, she gets it. That's what I wanted. So but yeah, the only one that really surprised me was the Flynn Rider, though, and I was so excited about that. I was just like, "That's perfect."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I want to take us a step back because I realized we kind of just dove right into it. Normally, we give kind of at the top of the episode a chance for our author guests to tell the listeners about their books, and we just
oh,
got right into it with you. So, yeah, your
that's because we're
trilogy,
so
your
fun.
previous works. Yeah.
Okay, so I have two series. The first series I wrote is a contemporary romance, sort of a sports romance, college romance mainly. I admit I finished Elle Kennedy's series. I love her, and I was like, I'm going to write a sports romance, but I didn't want to write hockey because I didn't want to feel like I was doing what she did. And then, of course, hockey took off, and I'm like, God damn it. I wrote about football. So, yeah, I could kick myself on that one too. But I wrote the series is a college romance series. It's Never You, haha, Never University. I thought I was very clever with that. And and that one is a 4-book interconnected series. So, and everyone is a different couple. And then um, I actually had started out writing fantasy. So when romantasy started taking off, I was like, well, might as well do that. That should be easy, right? And that was a joke. Um, and so I started this series, Dawn of the White Witch. And it's been great, but it's been challenging. But yeah, so I have the first 2 books are out. I also have both of them are in audiobooks. I don't have audiobooks for the other series. I just have audiobooks for this series. And the third one is in the works of being finished. It is in the process. We are processing. So yeah, I've got it to my alpha reader, developmental editor husband, and then my person who does the alpha reading for me because she's awesome. And then it'll go to beta readers. So still got a little time, but we're getting there.
So, being a contemporary and a fantasy author, what are some, I guess, unique challenges to both genres that you weren't necessarily anticipating when you started writing?
That's a really great question. I mean, the challenges with I think writing a romantasy are pretty obvious, right? I mean, there's a lot of plotting involved. These, very complex storylines, magic systems, all of that stuff is really obvious. Um, but what's less obvious is when you're writing contemporary, and I think that's because so much is reliant on those characters, and getting people to really feel a connection with those characters. And if you can't do that, then nobody's going to read it. It doesn't matter if you have the most beautiful prose in the world. Most romance readers really don't give a fart. Excuse my. I'm
You could
going.
you
I'm
could
going to
curse.
say
It's
something
fine.
worse.
You can
Hold on.
swear. It's
Trigger
okay.
warning. You could curse.
Okay. So they don't care. What they really are concerned with is, do I feel a connection to this character? And something else that is very striking, probably in both genres, but more so in contemporary, is they will give guys a lot more wiggle room morally than women.
Mhm.
Women are really hard on women. We'll let the guys get away with whatever. They can be
Right.
complete assholes, and we're just like, oh, but he's cute. Girls, no, you got to be really careful when it comes to writing female characters, and especially when you're dealing like with a sports or kind of romance, because people expect those characters to be possibly a little bit more like sweet than necessarily than I tend to write. So my characters might have been a little edgy for that genre, which is another reason why I moved to romantasy, because it felt like it fit a little bit better. Though I'm really pleased with my Never You series, and a lot of people like that about it. But it definitely was a little bit, the characters were a little bit morally gray, which isn't necessarily something that's as easily accepted in that genre.
And I'm
That makes
sure
sense.
Yeah.
the world building in both genres are totally different because in contemporary, we sort of live in that world already, right?
Yeah.
So you assume, or the reader assumes, they know what's going on in the world
Mhm.
around them. But yeah, in fantasy, you have to build from the ground up of what world are we in, and
Yeah.
how how do characters react to that world, and does the world react to the characters? So yeah, you have to pack a lot of information into those fantasy books to get that kind of tangibility to those characters.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier when it's just, I don't have to think about the words that I'm using, or things that what I'm calling things, or did they have this type of pen during this period? Like, you really have to think about that,
Hmm.
because you want, even if you're doing a fantasy, usually you try to ground it in some sort of historical period. Mine tend to be in the late 1800s because I love that kind of gas lamp fantasy period. So but yeah, and then there's the challenge with just trying to get the information and world building across without it being overly expositiony. I don't know that that's an actual word, but um, you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
really put it out there quick, and it's got to be interesting. You can't
Right.
just
Mm-hmm.
there used to be a time when fantasy writers would just drone on, blah, 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 and everybody just let it go. Nowadays, people are like, you can't keep my attention. I'm moving elsewhere. So that was a big challenge starting this series was getting all that world building out as quickly as possible in a way that wasn't, making everyone fall
Yeah.
asleep.
Kind of like showing instead of telling
Yeah.
without feeling like they're lost as you're showing them, right? And like
Hmm.
that's the challenge because like I've read some fantasy books where like they're doing a lot of showing, which is great, but then I'm like I have no idea what I'm reading, like which way's up, where am I going, right?
Yeah.
Like where am I? What am I doing? I don't know. But then you've read some other fantasies where they just kind of like plop you in a world and they're just like telling you all about it, and then you get like if you don't have the time to sit through and like read 50 pages right then and there, because sometimes you don't, then you're kind of like coming and going, and that's hard to like actually get into the world then. So finding a balance between the two, I can imagine, is really hard.
It is. It is. With Dawn, my what I did was I had a character in the very beginning trying to use the magic and using it incorrectly and hurting herself. So by using that, that was sort of my medium to get across how that magic worked. Um, and I felt like that was fairly effective. But it is a challenge. It's something that you really have to think about, and you want to give the basics up front, and then you want to sprinkle in more information as you go, because again, readers just don't have that attention span, and I'm not blaming readers because I am that reader. I do not have a good attention span. So
Yeah,
if it's going to bore me, it's going to bore other people for sure. So
yeah, fair. It's a good test, right? If you're entertained, then at least then you know that it should translate well.
hopefully.
I want to bring back Courtney, when you mentioned that L. Kennedy kind of inspired you to start writing your Never You series,
Hmm.
or yeah, series. Um, are there any other inspirations that kind of got you to start writing professionally, or maybe you think of when you are writing one of your series?
Well, I mean, like I said, I started out writing fantasy. And that I was a huge Robert Jordan, George R. Martin, Carey. Like I had like the old school, a lot of the fantasy. That was a lot of what I was really interested in, and that's what inspired me. Of course, at the time, a lot of what I was reading was male fantasy authors. So my books were very female centric because that's what I wanted to read. At the same time, those were my first books, or that was my first book was called A Pretty Pawn, and it will never see the light of day. It was a complete and utter piece of crap.
Oh
But it
no!
was my first book. It was my
Yeah,
first book. So, I'm experimenting and whatever, but that was definitely in that style that I was you know, kind of pursuing at that time. And, thank God I was going for agents at that point and I wasn't trying to self publish because that should never have, nobody should read that crap. Um, so that was what really I think like inspired me starting off. I mean, I had been writing forever. I had been saying that I was going to write forever, but it wasn't until my son was born. And I don't know if any of you guys are parents, but you tend to lose yourself a little bit when you're a mom, with your kids. And I needed something of my own. So that's what really got me to start writing was I joined a writers group and I just started writing there. So yeah, the writing really started out as fantasy and extremely dark fantasy. I really like dark fantasy. Mark Lawrence is another one that I've read a lot of and stuff like that. So I have this like kind of look about me, like soccer mom, whatever. And I used to just freak everybody out at writers group because I'd come in with like the darkest shit you could possibly imagine. They're like, okay, this lady's nuts. Um, but it's fun like that. But yeah, that's where I really started. But I always switch depending on what I'm reading. I went to YA for a little while when I went down my YA path, and then um, I I just went on a romanticy kick. A girlfriend of mine got introduced me to smutty romance, and well, I can't even remember the name of the book right now. It was one of the old school ones, but it was so smut. I didn't know that existed. Okay, I knew about my mom's romance. It was like the Harlequins with the guys tearing off their shirts, and
Yep.
they're much sweeter, and not all of
Mhm.
the hardcore like BDSM whatever. And so my girlfriend introduced me to that, and I was just hooked, and I read everything. But yeah, it was around the Elle Kennedy series when I read her off campus series where it's like, I want to do this. I can do this. And I knew at the time that romance was a little easier for self publishing than like fantasy. So I thought I'd just give it a shot. And Never You was my first romance book I ever wrote. If I could, I'd go back and change things, because you learn as you go. But it's a good first effort, I guess. um, but yeah, so it evolves and it changes, depending.
So I know you said you're writing like fantasy romance right now. Are you
hmm
planning on like going back and forth between contemporary and fantasy? Are you feeling like you're gonna stick with fantasy? Are you going wherever the wind takes you?
Not 100% sure, honestly. I enjoyed writing contemporary. I can write it so much faster. The books are also like
Yeah.
literally half the length.
Mhm.
Literally half the length. Right now, the book
Yeah.
I'm writing is at about 140,000 words. I think that is equivalent to 450, 500 pages, something like that.
Mhm.
My Never You books, I think the longest one was 80,000 words. So it is a much bigger process and harder to do in a lot of respects. And it's so much fun because I can be a little bit sillier
Mhm.
in the contemporary stuff. I have if you can't tell, I think I'm funny. I don't know if everybody else gets it, but I think I'm hysterical. And so I tend to do a lot of more joking, and there's some funny parts in my uh, in my fantasy too because I can't stop myself. But I really went off a little bit with the other ones. So I may go back to that eventually. The problem is there's always all these different storylines in my head that are like, do me now. And if I
Mhm.
could just like move on, I would honestly. But I have to finish these books now, so so I'm just like trying to get through this so I can get to something else that is kind of in my head trying to work its way. So it'll probably be another fantasy just because that's the kind of stuff rooting around in my brain right now. But I make no promises.
Fair enough.
So, Courtney, you went down the path of finding an agent to
Mhm.
publish your books. We've had
Originally.
other authors jump straight into self-publishing. What, in your opinion, are kind of the pros and cons to both um, ways to get published?
I will probably say that there are more cons, at least to me, trying to go trad publishing. There were some good parts of it was that, like I said, my first book wasn't ready. It just wasn't ready. My second book really wasn't ready either. So in that respect, I didn't put something out there that wasn't ready because I don't think we don't know what we don't know, right? So, and I think a lot of authors they're like, "Oh, I wrote this, and let me put it out to the world, right?" And they don't know that it's, a piece of crap. Don't get me wrong. There are a few people out there who write their first book and they're wonderful. I don't like those people, but they do exist. I am not one of them, right? So that was definitely a positive thing because I got a lot of feedback, not a lot, but the feedback I got, some of it was really good and really helpful and really changed me as a writer. But it's also a brutal process. Um, and if like my first book, it wasn't ready, and I knew it wasn't ready, fairly early on in the process. I realized. I mean, I got a lot of requests, but the consensus was, this isn't quite ready. The second book, I was trying to uh, push a dark Southern Gothic YA fantasy at the beginning of COVID, and everyone was like, "Sorry, honey, that ain't happening. Nobody wants to read that shit right now." And that was frustrating because I had gotten to the point with some people where they're like, "We really like the book, but I don't know that I can sell it right now."
Mm,
And that is gut wrenching,
yeah.
Mhm.
because you're waiting so long when somebody has a full. And there are even points where I had a full with somebody and they never responded back. And that's just really, because you're literally hanging on pins and needles, right? Waiting for somebody, because it's huge. If an agent takes you, on as a client, that's huge. And you're waiting on pins and needles, and they're just like, and they don't give a shit, and they're just, and I think that was really hard emotionally for me. Um, so after I finished my second book, that I tried to get published during COVID, I took a break for a while, and I was just like, I don't know that I can do this anymore emotionally. It just took a toll on me. So when I decided to do romance, that was like, okay, I don't need an agent. I'm just going to go forward and I'm going to do this my own way. And it's been so much better. I mean, my husband's an artist, so I have like these beautiful covers. I don't even have to pay anybody for, I just have to, well, I mean, I have to pay him with sexual favors, but that's just part of marriage, really.
Yeah, it's part of the deal.
Yeah. Um, I could say that because he would totally laugh at that. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I have, that's one of the biggest things that you have as an issue is trying to get that good cover, um, and, and whatnot. So it's actually been great. I get to make my own decisions. Do I think I might try publishing in the future? I don't know. Always hoping that my books would take off and they'd contact me, like Carissa Broadbent and these people who's, but I'm not quite there yet. So but yeah.
Yeah. I think it's really important that you bring up the point of like sellability in trad publishing because I feel like that has become a huge conversation now about how indie authors and like the indie book community is really pushing the boundaries and like setting the trends and how like
Yeah.
things like hockey romance or romantasy and like authors like Carissa Broadbent will blow up in the indie space and all of a sudden now that it's been proven that that there's a market for it, everybody wants to
Exactly.
traditionally publish it. So now everybody's getting every publishing company is coming out with like a million different hockey romances, a million different
Yep.
romantic like enemies to lovers.
Mhm.
And on one hand, it is very exciting to see like some of the authors, either like indie romance, indie romantasy authors that like we know and love, getting these like traditionally published deals for their older book series that we love. But then you're almost like, yeah, you almost just want to like shake them and be like, why couldn't you see this like years ago? Because we
Mhm.
read this book in like 2020 and we loved it. And it's just
Yeah.
taken so long that it's almost like behind the curve and indie's already like moved on a bit.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point to make, is it's all about sellability. I mean, they don't want to take that chance. It's the same thing that you encounter with movies these days,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
They're doing
Mhm.
remakes and 5 billion different Marvel films, which, don't get me wrong, I love Marvel films. But it's because they know it's going to sell. That's one of the
Right.
reasons I think they're doing so many books into movies. Again, you have a
Mhm.
ready-made audience. It's the same thing with publishing. I mean, if they look at something, they can like it, but if they don't think they can sell it a lot, they're not going to take it on because it's a risk. So especially with romance, I think, because in romance they're looking for the money in romance. They, romance tends to carry other genres, right? So sellability is huge when you're talking
Yeah.
about romance.
Yeah. I think it's funny that you bring up the books being made into movies because I remember like being a middle schooler or high schooler, like reading all of like my books, and I was like, if I can't do the job that like I want to do, I work in healthcare. I was like, I would go ahead and just turn my favorite books into movies because like that wasn't really happening then. Like it happened with like
Mm,
Hunger Games, but like the books that like you really loved that were like L. Kennedy's Off Campus, right? Like those kind of things. Like they just didn't make those into like movies and TV shows. And now all of a sudden like it's this big thing.
yeah,
But like hockey romance, I think like when indie romance like when that was all taking off, it was a lot of like indie authors. I think we did an episode once, I think I counted, I read like 47 hockey romances in like a year. Which is
Yeah.
really bad of
I
me.
could I could literally kill myself. I could kill myself for not doing a hockey romance. I told my husband a million times, like, oh my god, if I had done the hockey romance, my books would. My books did
Mhm.
okay, but if they were hockey romance, oh, because I was
But
right
Yeah.
at that point where they were
see,
taking off, and I just
Yep.
went, oh god.
when the football romance comes around, you're already
You're
leg up on the
ready.
game.
It's
Yeah,
already
Yeah.
done. Yeah. But
because
like
people are gonna
now
get sick of it.
if you ask me to read a hockey romance, like I have to really be in the mood for a hockey romance or
Mhm.
like I just
Yeah.
don't want to. I've like hockey romanced myself out. Now
Yeah,
I'd
you hurt
rather read
yourself
a
up.
football romance. Yeah, exactly. So, it's just funny that like how indie kind of like paves the way for traditional publishing because it's so and it can happen so much faster. Like
Yeah.
one of our favorite indie authors, she like publishes like 3 books in a year. And I'm like, I don't know I don't know what you're doing. I don't know like what magic you put in these books. I don't know how you get it here, but like go forth
Some
and
people
conquer.
just some people just write fast. That is not me, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't think I would
Yeah.
write fast if I was an author at all.
No. Well, and to
I
your
stress over
earlier
everything.
point, she mostly writes like contemporary romance, so they are,
Correct.
it's not like she's pumping out three like 800-page books. I wouldn't put it
They're
Right.
like
past her.
300-page contemporary
Yeah.
romances.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't put it past her though. Like I'm sure she could get it done if she so chose.
Some people are super fast. That is not me. I've actually taken to trying to do was it voice to text kind of stuff to try to speed up
Mhm.
my process. But the problem is just that I have a tendency to edit as I write, and I have a tendency to pick apart sentences, and I'm too picky. That's my problem. I'm very, very picky about how things are written. Not saying that I'm a great writer. I probably still suck, but I am picky about what I suck at writing. So I spend way too much time sometimes on just like a stupid little part, just like this doesn't sound right, and yeah.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that some people they can write like and they just put out a book in a month, and you're like, how do you do that? Teach
Yeah.
me. But no, I
Mhm.
can't do that. Sorry.
Yeah. It's definitely like a superpower, I feel like, right? Like,
Yeah. Oh,
you
yeah,
know.
definitely. One
Yeah.
that I do not possess. No, I'm definitely not that fast. So,
So I know we can't talk about romance without talking about tropes.
mm,
What are some of your all-time favorite tropes, and what are some that need to go away for a little bit?
favorite tropes, enemies to lovers. I mean, everybody loves that. Brother's best friend. I don't know why I like that one so much, but I do. I freaking love it. I think and I really love friends to lovers. I really like it when it's like a childhood friend or somebody that somebody knows from childhood and then they become romantically involved later. Those tend to be like some of my favorite books. The ones that I hate, I hate the was it the mis what is it, misinterpretation, or I can't think of the
Mhm.
word.
Miscommunication.
Miscommunication.
Miscommunication. Thank you. Oh my god, I
Mhm.
hate the miscommunication trope so hard. It seems like a cop out to me. I
Mhm.
just, if a 5-minute conversation is going to clear up this problem, then I don't want to read about it. Like it's
Mhm.
and that goes as a writer too. Like I will sit there and pick it apart, stuff that I'm writing, and like, okay, well, if she just opened her mouth and was not an ass and just spoke to him about this, would it clear it up? Because if so, nobody wants to read that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is a pregnancy trope, probably just because I've been there, done that, moving on. You know, I think that that's more just I've had my kids and I don't fantasize about that anymore or whatever, you know. So, but yeah, those are probably the two that I'm really just not thrilled with. Um,
I I
so,
agree with those. I agree
Yeah.
with those, especially the miscommunication, or like where I'm like, if you guys would just be adults and talk, like
exactly.
this shouldn't be a problem. This is not a
Yeah.
conflict. Just
Right.
use your
Like I
words.
I can forgive miscommunication trope in like YA or something where like it makes sense that they're not talking about it. But
Hmm.
once they're past like the age of like 22, I'm like, okay. Especially like once they're past 25 and I'm like, you're fully cooked in your head. Like you're
Yeah.
developed. We can use our words. Like that's when it almost gets more frustrating because you're like, okay, like I can't
Hmm.
even I've given you excuses. I'm trying to help you here. Or like
Mm-hmm.
when
Yeah.
it's kind of second chance and you find out finally what caused the issue 10 years ago that they haven't spoken since. And you're like, that's it. I've been waiting for this grand reveal. And it's
Yeah.
just like you overheard part of a conversation 10 years ago.
And then you didn't ask the person to clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. That's the kind of stuff that makes me mad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I obviously there's going to be points in a story where you will miscommunicate, but that should be cleared up relatively quickly. That shouldn't be. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't think that the whole book coming to the end of the book and then being like, oh well, if she had had a 10-minute conversation with him 5 years ago, this wouldn't have happened. That drives me
Correct.
crazy.
I
So
read
yeah,
I read a book a couple of weeks ago and I'm forgetting exactly which book it was where there was a miscommunication, but it was cleared up in like 3 pages and I was like
yeah,
that's how you do it. I was like if
that's
you're going
how
to
you do
have
it.
miscommunication, great. Wonderful. It happened.
Yeah.
There was like a little bit of conflict. Done.
Because
Moving on.
people do that all the time. I mean,
Mhm.
I
That's
mean,
real
shit. Me and
life.
my husband, we get in arguments about the dumbest shit possible, and it's just because we don't understand what the other person's saying. That happens all the time, you
Mhm.
know. But yeah, to drag it on for an entire book and then have the whole premise of the book being on something like that is what drives me nuts. Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
One other question we have for you, kind of now that we've talked about the trad publishing versus independently publishing, self-publishing, what advice would you have for anybody who's listening and goes, I really want to write something, I want to put it out there, but I don't know what to do?
Um. Well, I mean, it depends on what you're asking. If you're talking about going trad versus self-publishing, that's really a personal decision, I think. Something that people do need to consider is that if you are going the trad publishing route, you just have to be aware that they don't necessarily do as much marketing as people expect. That's something that I've heard from a lot of people that they go into trad publishing expecting their books to be marketed, and it's just not unless you're like really up there bestseller kind of book that they're really pushing. Often the marketing isn't that great. As far as indie, I mean, the thing with indie publishing is you have to do everything and it's fucking exhausting and you get burnt out real easy. And I think that's where I really was like, like a couple years ago when I was starting on Hunt because you're doing your marketing, you're doing podcasts, you're doing these, in-person sales and trying to do a website and all of this and you're doing it all yourself and I was working so much and it's just exhausting and then you eventually have to strike up a work-life balance or else you go crazy, which is kind of where I am now where I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, you know what, I hit this time of day and I'm not writing anymore, I'm not working anymore, I'm going to go and sit down with my family, we're going to watch a show or we're going to play a game, we're going to do something. But yeah, there were a couple years there with that was like just nonstop, 7 days a week working, and it just burned me out really badly.
Mm.
If you're talking about as far as writing in general, my best advice would be don't try to publish your first book. Or if you really want to try to publish your first book, get a developmental editor before you try to publish your first book. That's nobody, your first book is going to not be great. I mean, even if you do a good job, there are going to be problems, and you can't see them yourself because you're too close to it. I mean, that's for everybody, really. But for your first book, a lot of people think, I'm just going to write this book, I'm going to put it out there, it's going to be amazing. And then the real world comes in and goes, no, 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 no. Because, you just don't know what you don't know. So that would always be my advice to, writers. First book, it's either you're going to probably trash it, or you're going to need to get some sort of help to make sure that that book is something that people are actually going to want to read.
Yeah, all important points. And I'm again
Yeah.
glad that you brought up the marketing piece because I feel like it really ties back into our earlier conversation about sellability because it's true like you really only see the same like big name authors or books getting marketed and even to the point I remember I first read Butcher and Blackbird on Kindle Unlimited like,
Hmm.
as it was kind of
Hmm.
starting to blow up. And then I
Yep.
remember, like, 6 months to a year later, after it got pulled off of Kindle Unlimited and was, like, getting all of this attention and, like, really getting pushed by publishers, and all of a sudden, I live in New York City, and I was sitting on the subway, and there was, like, a Subway ad for it. But it was interesting because kind of
Wow.
to our point about how now there's, like, a million hockey romances, I was like, "It's kind of weird that I'm seeing a Subway ad for this because everybody who's, like, in the book community, like, already is talking about this book, like,
Yeah, they already
it
knew
didn't
about it. Right.
need it
Yeah.
doesn't need to be advertised on, like, the New York City like, on the C
Correct.
train. Like, that's
Hmm.
not where you're necessarily gonna find your new readers. But,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
it's, like,
valid.
such yeah, like, I didn't think about it before, but you're so right that, like, you really kind of only see the same things, and then
Hmm.
unless you're following and engaging with the authors on, like, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, their own website, and then that's kind of more where you get the marketing.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and marketing is the bane of my existence. I am terrible at it. I thought I was going to be fabulous. Like I read all of these self-publishing books early on. I'm like, I got this. No, no, marketing is hard. Marketing is very,
Marketing
very
is
It
hard.
hard.
changes. It
Marketing is
changes
very
every
hard.
year. It's like
Hmm.
you got to play with the algorithm. You have to,
Oh, yes.
and
The
it's
algorithm sucks.
and you don't really know if you're gaining any traction, um, or if you're reaching who you want to be reaching,
Hmm.
Yeah,
especially as an independent person. Yeah.
my first, like I'd say year, 2 years, when I first put out Never You, TikTok was awesome. I could go on TikTok and I was making, these not reels, but the videos,
Yeah.
and they were doing reasonably well. I didn't have any huge, huge ones, but they did reasonably well, and I made sales, and that was great. And I was actually doing fairly well that first year using TikTok, and then it just
Yeah.
the algorithm changed, and it just stopped. It stopped working, and then you have to adjust. Same with Facebook ads. You have the Facebook ads, you figure out how to do it. All new algorithm, they're doing things completely different. Great. Now I got to relearn it all over again. So yeah, it's a pain. It's a pain.
Hmm.
One of these days I will be good enough that I will be able to hire someone to take it all over and do it for me. So,
But for right now, Courtney, where can our listeners find your books and connect with you?
well, all my books are in Kindle Unlimited, so they can all be read in KU, and also in like library apps like Hoopla. And they can find me on Instagram and TikTok. They are the same handle because I'm smart like that. Author C.R. Lee. It's pretty easy. And then I also have a Facebook called it's C.R. Lee's Bangin' Books that I am terrible about writing to, and I need to get back on that again. So I'm going to. I swear to God. But it's been a rough year.
Sure.
I keep
Yeah.
saying that, but yeah. So I have not been keeping up with that group as well as I should. Um, but you can find
Okay.
out about all my books. I always put announcements up on Instagram and whatnot. So, and my husband's
Awesome.
currently working on the cover, and we're about this close to having it finished, and I can't wait to show everybody because it's going to be awesome. So
That's
I get
exciting.
all excited.
And
Hmm.
your third book, Fury of the White Witch, TBD fall this year, hopefully.
Yeah, I was hoping for the summer, but it's not going to happen. So we're focused on the fall now.
Great.
Sorry, guys, I'm behind. So, but again, 140,000 words, people. It's 140,000 words, and I'm not done with it. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Well,
okay.
I'm an editor that I tend to add as I edit.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Fair.
That's fair. Good
good for
things take
KU,
time.
though.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention or talk about or anything like that?
Better answering questions than coming up with them myself.
That's okay.
Well,
But just if anybody is interested in dark romantasy, when I say dark, I mean dark more in theme than in romance, which I say that to people a lot because I think sometimes those get confused.
Mhm.
I don't want people going into my books expecting something that isn't there. I prefer my male characters to worship my female characters as much as humanly possible, even if they're
Mhm.
enemies. I want them, all hail kind
We
of
love
thing.
a good enemies that's still down bad for her.
Yeah,
That
exactly,
is
exactly.
yes.
That's what I love. That's what I love.
Yeah.
I've been in enough bad relationships that I don't want to write about them, really. So, um, but dark romance is awesome, totally cool. I read it sometimes too, and I love it. But for my own writing, I just that's sort of a distinction that I'd like to make, is that it is very, very dark in theme. I've got torture, I've got gore, I've got all sorts of yummy things. But yeah, but it's in theme more than in the actual romance itself. Romance itself is very worshipy for the male,
Awesome.
at least. So
Fair enough.
well, thank you so much, Courtney, for joining
thank
us
you.
and taking time out of your day. Uh,
Yeah.
Lovely conversation, and I'm very much looking forward to Fury of the White Witch, and I have to catch up with the series now.
Yeah, no, you have to, because you
I
talked
have
to me.
to.
Now you have to
Yeah,
read
I
Yeah.
have to. I have
it.
no
Yeah.
reason not
Yeah.
to now.
It's wonderful. I mean, I might be slightly biased, but so. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you again to C.R. Lee for joining us today, and a quick reminder to all our listeners to subscribe so you get new episodes automatically, like this one. If you haven't left a review yet, please consider it. Maybe 5 stars, maybe less, but uh, hopefully not. We really appreciate your feedback and let us know how we're doing. Uh, Thanks.
And thanks for listening to this week's episode, and thank you for being a part of Trigger Warnings Book Club. Leave us a comment wherever you're listening and tell us what books you're enjoying currently. Lastly, follow us on Instagram at trigger.warnings.bookclub.
One more thing, because I'm still annoying. I'm still running the New York City Marathon in November, raising money for the Book Fairies, a charity that gets books into the hands of kids who need them. If you'd like to support the run, or you just want me to stop asking you to, all of the links are in the show notes and our Instagram bio. Every bit helps. Thank you so much.
How close are you, Holly,
Um,
to your
that is
to
a
your
good
goal?
question. Let me do a little live check. We have $347 left to go.
There you go. Very close. And when's the last day
Nice.
people can donate?
Um, Mid-October. So you have
Okay,
a little bit
plenty.
of time.
Come on, people. $347
Help
to
me
help
out so you can
kids.
stop hearing this.
Help Holly help kids. If you
Yeah.
don't help Holly, you hate kids.
It's true. You hate children's
It's the
literacy.
Yeah.
It's the only logical progression there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we get inundated with 1-star reviews. Thanks so much for listening, guys. We'll see you next Monday.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.